good evening. We are coming to you live from our WSLS 10 studio, and we just finished up our hour-long special 2020 Focus, the push for equality, which just aired from 7 till 8. And we wanted to take some time just to...
We are coming to you live from
hold on.
our WSLS
Hold on. Got to put things on mute.
We're monitoring
Right.
the feed.
Okay. All right. Let me quiet that. But yeah, we wanted to come to you live just to have a discussion about what you just saw. If you have any questions or if you want to comment further, we want to have that opportunity to have that interaction with you, but then just also share why it is that we felt it was important to do this, to take the time to address these issues that we've all been seeing in the community, and a lot of people have been having conversations about them, but a lot of people just haven't really been sure what to do next. So
I think what's most interesting about the position we're in as journalists is we respond every single day to what's happening all around us. So for me, when I approached you and our assistant news director and our news director about doing something like this, it was really just a response to what was happening all around us. Every single day we were reporting on different events happening within Southwest Virginia and beyond, and I just felt that we had a responsibility to say something, to do something. And for me, even throughout this process, as I posted on Facebook earlier, that TV production seems so simple when you watch it. You know, 7 to 8, it was this broadcast, and so much went into making it what it was.
there was a lot that went into it. I mean, just a lot of conversation.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, but that conversation with us, I think, helped provide perspective just for us. So I can only imagine and only hope, rather, that it did the same thing for everyone at home.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I learned a lot watching it. I think we all kind of made comments of, oh, I didn't know that. Or, you know, growing up in Southwest Virginia, there were things that I didn't know. I didn't understand the history of Gainsboro. So, like, learning all of that was really incredible. Just to have all of that in one place and understand just how things have gotten to where they are, and just knowing the history, and then hearing, you know, from Miss Estelle, who's like, I've been working for years, you know, on this neighborhood, and I think that was really interesting. And then just some of the graphics and stuff that went into the stories to see, you know, the redlining. Gosh, just seeing, you know, that laid out across our city, you know, a place that we're so familiar with right here in our backyard, I thought was really interesting, and just thought, you know, wow, I'm learning so much on just how we got to this point.
And we do want to make sure to remind you, if you have questions, if you want to comment on what you just saw, we encourage you to put that in the Facebook comments. We have folks who are monitoring that, and they'll let us know. And
check
we'll
right
respond.
now.
Right. We want to interact. We want to talk with you, because each of us had a very different and distinct story that we did. For you, McKinley, was there a particular reason that you wanted to focus on policing, or?
Well, I think just because, as I said in the intro to my story, kind of what started this movement across the nation was that interaction with police officers. So I felt it important, especially given what's happening, but then also who I am, just to bring that group of people together to have that conversation. And it was so powerful to hear police officers being vulnerable about the things and issues that they face. I think that Chief Roman from here in Roanoke, when he spoke about how there are times that they go into situations and they're just as afraid as we are when they show up to situations, and we being really anyone who has an interaction with officers. I think that was powerful. And then to hear how certain things are in place, and that's kind of a part of the web extra that you'll see. There's the full conversation online, and Chief Zudema from Lynchburg shared how within the last few weeks, people came to him with complaints about things in the department, and he tried his best to implement that immediately. And so it was important to me to let people know that those things are happening, and then bring people to the table to make charges for more things to come.
And we do. We have, I don't want to cut you off.
No. I thought it was interesting in your story how not everyone had the same perspective from the community. I thought that was really interesting, even just within, you know, the police chiefs have different perspectives, but then different perspectives within members of the community sitting there at the same time going, wait a second, I don't know that I'm connecting the dots here.
It was a powerful moment for me at the end when she said, well, we can't exclude them. They are a part of the community as well. And then Chief Roman adding that button at the end that you can never solve a problem without having part of the problem there. And I thought that was powerful.
Yeah.
So one of our questions, what made each of us want to get involved? And I know for me, so my piece was on history and just tracing the history of the issues and the disparities that we've seen, how that links all the way back to slavery 400 years ago. And for me, I'm a little bit of a history buff in that I think it's so important to recognize that a lot of what we're seeing today, it's not new. These are issues that have continued to crop up throughout the history of America. And so it's important to recognize that, yeah, a lot of these issues, when you look at from slavery to segregation, the civil rights movement to where we are now, it's a lot of the same issues that have continued to come up. And so for me, that's why I think it's so important. We had a piece about education. It's so important that especially young people recognize where we've come from and what has happened so that they have a full account and a full picture of where we need to go.
Well, that was something that, if you remember that first meeting, that feels like it was about 2 years ago, but really was a month and a half ago. You talked about that, is highlighting that history so we know how we got here. And I think I learned a lot of that from your story, and especially from John's story. Just seeing how and hearing from the community members on how this was when these things were introduced, and this is how it's held me back for so long, and this is how I had to fight to overcome that. I think proves that, as you just mentioned, some of the issues that feel new for so many people really aren't.
Right. And I mean, one interesting thing when I was talking with Dr. Reed from Virginia Tech, one thing that I didn't know, I think it was back in 1951, there were Black Americans who presented a petition to the United Nations that said America was committing genocide against Black Americans. And with that, if you ever have an opportunity to go take a look at it, I mean, it details accounts of police brutality against Black Americans in the 1940s, in the 1950s. And a lot of just reading through those accounts are just eerily similar to things that we're hearing today. So it's just, we continue to see a lot of the same things that we have seen for decades.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to be involved because these are conversations that we're having that, you know, I think everyone has been having in their own circles, and everyone's just trying to, you know, figure out kind of, okay, what can I do? What's my role? And I just thought that was really interesting, and some of the takeaway points, and then just listening to all the perspectives. I was really touched by Magdala's story
absolutely.
On the mothers, because motherhood is something that unifies people across the board, and just listening to the moms sit down at the table and to talk about the problems and struggles that they have faced is something that any mom could listen to, because at the end of the day, your heart as a mother is just you want something better for your child. And so I think that is a unifying, you know, just role, and then topic, just listening to that really brought tears to my eyes, listening to those mothers.
Well, it's one thing to hear from those moms some of the things that their kids have told them. And that was powerful to me because so much has happened in 2020. What are we, 7 months and a couple of days
oh my
into
gosh,
the year?
it feels like it's been
So much has
long.
happened. But the coronavirus talk, the push for racial equality talk, these are things that you kind of don't want to introduce all these problems to your kid, you know? But they know what's happening around them. And that's something that I hear parents talk about. I'm not a parent, but a lot of my friends who do have young children, they're like, you know what, my kid is 4 or 5, but these are conversations I'm having to have because she notices everything happening around her. And to hear those moms talk about what those kids shared with them kind of broke my heart in some cases, because they're just babes, you know?
Yeah, no. Yeah, one of them, she said at 3 that she said she didn't want to be brown anymore. I mean, that's heartbreaking. Anyone asking questions?
Yes. So one question, will you get to watch the entire program? Yes, it will be posted on our website, WSLS.com. So if you didn't have an opportunity to watch it in its entirety when it came on from 7 to 8, yes, you can head to our website shortly and you can watch the entire program.
Yeah.
Anything else we're getting?
Right, I know. I'm just trying to.
I know. I was looking earlier. So feel free to go on there and then just let us know, what questions and comments that you have. But yeah, I mean, so far, just, the feedback seems to be quite positive. Just, just really addressing this and leaning into this difficult conversation for many people.
Right. And I mean, we do, you know what, we're going to dive head in. We do have a question about racism. Do you feel that racism is just for one particular group of people, or is it for all people? And I don't, if you want to expound on the question, this is how I interpret it. Racism is something that affects all of us, because just overall in America, it's just important that everybody has equal access and equal rights. So overall, we are a much better country if we're all on equal footing. So hopefully that sort of addresses that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that for me, I was born in 1994, so
you're a babe.
Growing up, I can say that there weren't experiences that I can think of off the top of my head where I felt othered just based off of the color of my skin growing up on the other side of Virginia in Hampton Roads. But as I've gotten older, you realize that a lot of the systems in place in the civil rights era was really not that long ago. It feels like it was forever ago.
Yes.
But in stories like John's, when you heard her talk about things that held her back, again, it feels like a lifetime ago. It was really just yesterday.
Ago. Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that was, that's another thing. I too love history. So when you watch these things and then even just saying, I think you said it in the script in the show that, Martin Luther King Jr. would be 91.
Right.
I mean, he would still be potentially alive. You know, that's just, I don't know.
Right. You just have to, recently with the death of John Lewis and C.T. Vivian, you just have to remember we are not that far removed
not at all.
from all of this. From the Civil Rights Act, from the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That wasn't that long ago.
No.
Right.
There are so many of us who have relatives who can remember. I'll share a story that my mom told me growing up, how she grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, and it was segregated. And so one day her act of resistance was, there were water fountains for black people and then there were water fountains for white people. So her act of resistance, she went and she tried the water in the white people's fountain. And she said, it didn't taste any different. Right? I mean, it didn't make sense to her as a child why you had these two different water fountains when the water wasn't any different. So yeah, just knowing that this is something that affected my parents. We're not that far from all of this.
Well, and I think that too often in life, our problems feel like just our problems, when really they affect so many people. If I'm in a slump and I come to work, my attitude, my demeanor, it will have an effect on everyone around me. So when we talk about these issues, and I think the question was asking like particular communities and how racism perhaps affects them, it has a residual effect, I think, on everyone.
Right.
And hopefully through our stories today, people were able to understand that it affects, and I think that we've realized that probably within the last few months here, that this is something that all of us have to work to end. All of us are affected by it. All of us have a hand in it. And so as we move forward, hopefully all of us are on that same front, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
So another question. How do you find, how were we able to find these types of stories?
Well,
it wasn't hard.
Yeah, so for me, the toughest thing was just getting everyone on the same schedule.
Right, you had a whole lot of people, police chiefs, activists, pastor.
Yeah, that was tough. But I will say that the police chiefs were super easy to work with. They made themselves available. And as you'll see in the web extra with the full conversation, they had a lot to say. I mean, they got very specific on different things within their own departments that they've introduced. They explained different initiatives, maybe some training changes. I know in Danville, Chief Booth was saying how he's actually extended on-the-job training and also made it a bit more specific so that officers, whatever part of the city that they'll be working in, whichever part, they will be able to get that on-the-job training within that area so that the community can see them, they can get to know them, they're comfortable with them. And so it was challenging getting everyone together, but I think it worked in the end. Yeah, it was a perfect group of people.
It was interesting because for my story, so I'm not originally from this area, I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina, but I was not familiar with Bloody Monday in Danville prior to this, and that was a pivotal moment in the civil rights movement here in Virginia. And so it was a whole lot of, like, I appreciate the Danville Public Library because it was a whole lot of time
going through the
headlines, going through all the microfilm just to get information about it. And one thing that one thing that we kind of struggled with was just trying to find pictures and images from that day. And one thing that I learned was it actually was not well covered. It wasn't until there was national media attention that the civil rights struggle there started getting attention. So it was just interesting, though, going through the microfilm and seeing the headlines and what was being said during the time about the movement and how it was
portrayed.
Right, exactly.
Right. And how it was written in history. Wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Let me check.
Yeah, and just being, from Virginia, we're watching, and we've talked about this, like, I covered Lexington 10 years ago when the first initial complaint came in for having Lee Jackson Day and having the battle flags up on the city poles in Lexington. And it was a woman who came in, and she's actually a white woman who came in and complained and said this is not okay. And that was the start. Like they were 10 years ahead, and that was kind of the start. And then just watching this locality just go back and forth and just kind of grapple with what do we do with history, and then also just watching them as well, just because it is so entwined to their economy, their identity, and you're watching this identity crisis sort of unfold right before our eyes. So that's been really interesting to see, and then just see these changes happen recently, just them making a lot of decisions, voting soon, even tonight. I think you were talking about the Stonewall Jackson Cemetery and the changes that will happen, and we're watching history unfold.
But that's a crossroads that so many people find themselves at. I mean, I interviewed a lady today who feels like she's stuck between wanting to understand those who want to see all of these monuments disappear, they want to see names changed, but then also preserving history and figuring out how to do that. And so hopefully I am seeing, at least from in my perspective, that now more than ever, you talk about 10 years ago that they started this, it seems as though now finally these conversations are occurring and they're uncomfortable, but at least everyone is at the table as they're happening.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And so, and right now it seems, people on very extreme sides are the most vocal, and then it's kind of like the people in the middle. In fact, the woman who I interviewed for my story, JoJo Friday, was talking about right now we have people on both sides, the most extreme who are the loudest, and there's this large group of people in the middle who are just trying to figure out, how do I feel? What do I do? How do I truly, can I let go of this past and move forward, or do I, just all the feelings that you feel with that, and kind of coming to terms with your own opinions and things that you didn't even know that you felt until change happens. And then you're like, whoa, how do I feel about this? And so just talking about that, it's been really, that's kind of interesting. And we're watching that sort of unfold across our viewing area.
Yeah. Well, final observations. What is it that you hope people take away from our special, from all of this?
Just that the conversation continues. I think that is our job, and as journalists, to share what is happening around us, but then also start and continue conversation and keep people informed. And I think tonight we did just that. We educated people. I mean, I learned things. So I know that there were people at home.
Yeah.
Our producer's grandmother texted her halfway through, said that she was learning so much. So the hope is that people took away something that they did not know, and now they're at home having a conversation, no matter what end of the spectrum that it's on, but they're talking. And that to me matters, because that's how you can see that change that so many people are fighting for.
Yeah, I think for me, very similarly, that people would have these conversations, look at their own lives, you know, and just start there. Start with your family. Start with those people who are closest to you. Have these tough conversations and approach it with grace and love, and just loving people, like truly loving people, and then and just looking, okay, what can I do in my own sphere, in my own circle? Because that's where you start. You know, you cannot do something publicly that you're not doing privately. So having these private conversations of healing and forgiveness, saying, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. And then doing that within their own circle. And then you can kind of move on to, you know, making that a public thing if that's for you.
Well, that's so important. I think there are so many people who get overwhelmed.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You can't
with
save the
all of
world
this.
in a day.
Right, but it's so important, as Dr. Evans said, to affect change within your circle and within your systems. That is where we start. And then I just think it's so important to recognize, just because you haven't had a particular experience does not mean that experience doesn't exist.
Right.
So just recognize other people have different experiences and be open to listening and learning.
Absolutely.
So with that, we really appreciate you all taking the time to spend with us so that we could just have this chat, talk about the issues, talk about our special. Again, you can watch it. It will be posted at WSLS.com. You can watch it in its entirety. We have extended interviews with the police chiefs, the extended interviews with the mothers. Overall, we hope to educate and inform, and we hope that we were able to do that tonight. So thanks so much for tuning in.